This will be the assembly video for the Hunter frame bikes. That'll be the STX, STR, STR5, and then the new Lone Wolf Compact that's going to come out. They all have the same frame, so the basic assembly is the same. The only differences will be the rear wheel. We'll go over some of those differences with adjusting the chain tension later in the video. But the bike's been unwrapped, all the packaging off, being careful not to cut any of the wires, cut all those zip ties, get everything off, and then you're ready to start the assembly. We're going to get to the assembly now. Tools for the job. You're going to need a handful of Allen wrenches. I've actually had really good luck with these Harbor Freight Icon Allen wrenches. They don't seem to strip out. They've withheld assembly of dozens of bikes, so definitely something to consider. First thing we're going to go to is the front handlebars. You can see the stem faces forward. You want to make sure that the handlebar stem is the loose part on the fork. You tighten this bolt first and then the side bolts. Usually it's pretty good, but if you do have any play in your handlebars, that's how you tighten it. Top first, then the side ones. On the handlebar stem itself, you can see that there's some spacers here. This is to offset the light, so it's going to be the bolt, the light, and then the spacer when everything attaches. When you do tighten these are a smaller Allen key, so you're going to want to get these fairly tight, but when you do the actual really getting it nice and snug and tight, you're going to want to use these larger ones at the top. So tighten the smaller Allen key first, and then those second. We're trying to keep about an equal distance between these two gaps so you have even thread tightness. Next step, we'll be putting that front tire on. When you look at the front fork, there's actually a plastic piece right here to prevent you from compressing the brake lever until that front disc is on there. If you do compress that, you might have to do a process to spread the brake pads again. So don't compress the brakes once you remove that protective piece. Front tire goes on fairly simple. Has Allen bolts on either side that compress from the sides, but what actually holds the axle in place are these 4 bolts. So these will be loose to start so that this pivots and you can get it through the front hub, but then once you've tightened the ends, you're going to want to make sure you tighten these 4 bolts, and these are something you're going to want to pay attention to throughout the season to make sure those are tight. The next part of the installation will be the front basket, front fender. When you put the basket, you're going to want to make sure you manage these cables so that they're up above the basket. Don't have them pinched in here. The other part is the new FaceOff fender. So this fender is designed to flex out of the way for removal of the battery, as well as if you're going to put the bike in your back of your pickup truck where the front tire overhangs your tailgate. You're going to want to preload the zip ties with the fender, and then you'll actually have 2 zip ties secured up here and 1 on either side. You may have to move this clamp that holds the brake lever lower in order to tighten that zip tie on the side. With the brakes, one of the most common causes for disruption of the motor, where all of a sudden the motor turns off, is the brake calipers are designed when when you touch the caliper, it cuts power to the motor. There's a sensor here that goes into the brake caliper that senses when you touch this. If this sensor is set too tight, sometimes, especially when the weather gets hot and some of this plastic expands, the brake will inadvertently cut power to the motor without you depressing the handle. So if you're getting intermittent power loss, one of the things to check would be unplug this brake sensor. First try the right one, see if that fixes the issue. If that doesn't fix the issue, then try the left one. And if either one of those is causing a problem, what you're going to want to do is loosen this bolt right here that screws the sensor into the brake handle about a quarter turn. See if that resolves the issue, because most likely it's just a matter of this sensor being set just a little too tight. Basket front fender installed. One of the things to consider is I'll usually put a zip tie real loose right here to prevent this brake cable from rotating around this side of the basket. Just kind of manages things better as long as these wires are up, and that'll stop that from rotating around the side there. Originally, we had been shipping the bikes with the crank arms installed, but a couple got damaged in shipping, so we started to ship those separate. They're clearly labeled R for right, L for left. This would be the right side of the bike facing forward. So when these are installed, they're compression fit, so you want to make sure that one's facing down and the other's facing in the complete opposite direction. And because they're compression fit, sometimes the threads of the bolt won't quite reach. So if that happens, you can just tap on them with a soft mallet to get it to where the threads from the bolt will reach. With the crank arms on, now we can install the pedals. Alienation foot fetish pedals. They're also labeled right and left, and whether it's the right or the left, when they turn, their opposite threads, where the right will turn towards the front of the bike like that, and then the left will also turn towards the front of the bike like that when you're tightening them. Now the bike's basically assembled. When you do use the kickstand is adjustable, so if you don't like the angle of the bike, there is a Allen nut on the inside where you can change the distance to adjust the angle of the bike. You're going to want to periodically monitor a lot of the bolts. Talked about the front fender bolts. Make sure that this lock ring for your front chain ring's tight, as well as your rear cog. The chain tension, you're going to want a fairly tight chain. For the different bikes, it's a different system, but I'll go over some of the different options with how to adjust or remove the rear tire. You're going to want a fairly tight chain tension. You're probably only going to have like 1.5 inch movement up or down, especially if you're having problems. If the chain ever comes off, then it's just too loose. To make that adjustment or to remove the tire, these two bolts hold everything tight, so you loosen these first, and then to adjust the tension, there's a bolt that goes from the back here that when you tighten it, it pushes the axle further away from the bike and increases the tension. If you loosen it, then it loosens the tension. If you ever need to get the rear tire off, you're going to want to loosen the tension first so that this isn't under stress and you can easily remove that rear axle. And then when you tighten the tension again, you're going to want to tighten the bolts on either sides equally so that the tire's straight, and then find that point where it's about 1/2 inch up or down, which is basically a fairly firm tension. The easiest analogy would be like a chainsaw. If you've ever adjusted the tension on a chainsaw, that's about what you're looking to get out of your chain. We're now looking at one of the bikes with the automatic shifting hub. So the attachment's a little bit different. Same as before. If you're going to remove the hub or adjust the tension, loosen these two bolts first, and then the rear bolt, tighten it to push the axle further back to increase the chain tension. If you're removing the tire, you're going to need to remove this small bolt and this small one here so that the axle can push down. And then once you loosen the larger attachment bolt, everything will be able to slide. This is just an increased torque prevention device just to prevent that axle from rotating due to the increased torque of this rear hub. The battery can be charged at any time. You don't need to wait till it's fully drained. You can ride the bike for a mile, charge it till it's fully charged, and have it ready to go for the following day. The battery can be charged on or off the bike. You can remove the battery by utilizing the key, turn the key, and then flip the switch on the underside of the frame to remove the battery. When you put the battery on the charger, you don't want to leave it on the charger for longer than absolutely necessary. So once it's fully charged, you're going to want to disconnect it from the charger and put the battery either in storage or back onto the bike. We'd like to thank you for your purchase. Bikes are designed to last, withstand hunting conditions. We use high quality components. If you monitor your bolts, keep everything tight, take care of the bike, it's going to last for many, many years. Couple safety considerations. One, never put your finger anywhere near here while the bike is on or the battery's installed. If you do move the pedal, that can engage the motor, and if your hand's anywhere it shouldn't be, you could be in serious problems. So if you're going to work on the bike, remove the battery, make sure it's off. Don't put your fingers anywhere near the chain or belt while the bike's under any type of power. Bikes are mostly designed for off-road use, so if you're going to use them on the highways, you're going to want to add reflectors to the rear, front, additional lighting. We ship them mostly muted out so that guys who are ditching the bikes on the side of the road, trying to hide their bike, that there's not a bunch of reflectors that are going to catch light from, other hunters or cars going past. So if you're going to use them on the roadway, make sure you add additional safety features to the bike.